welcome to Queers and Quills, the official podcast. I'm audiobook narrator Kirt Graves. On every episode, I invite an attending author or narrator to join me for a one-on-one conversation about their lives and their art, so attendees and readers from across the world can get to know them not only as professionals, but as people. Joining me today is Paul Michael Winters. Paul is a best-selling, award-winning author of queer fiction, writing books he wishes he had growing up. He blends romance with genre elements to craft stories full of adventure and heart. His debut novel, Together in a Broken World, is a post-apocalyptic romance and adventure, while his most recent release, The Haunting Between Us, is a coming-of-age romance and ghost story. Welcome to the podcast, Paul.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I'm excited to get to chat with you. It's nice to get to meet you IRL. And I also have to say, I see your book cover of your second book at least once a day on TikTok. So you're doing a very good job of getting in front of the algorithm.
That's great. That's great to hear.
I mean, we are probably in the same circles, but the fact that it's showing up there at least every single day I see that book cover means you're putting in the work. So good job.
That's great. Yeah. TikTok is a mystery. Every now and then I have like one video that I thought was horrible do amazing, and these ones I spend like hours on just bomb. So who knows?
Oh boy, we could go down the rabbit hole of talking about why social media is hard, but we won't, because it might also reveal something about our ages. So we won't go there.
Sure.
But why don't you start by telling us your author origin story? How did you become an author?
Yeah, of course. I've always loved creative writing since I was a kid. Some of my best memories is like my mom reading my sister and myself The Hobbit. And, my mom was in theater, and so she embellished it. She had a great Gollum voice. It just, absolutely, I loved it. And so that's kind of what sort of set me on my, my reading journey. I love The Hobbit. I love like Mrs. Frisbee and the Raps of Nim. I was really big into, fantasy and speculative stuff. And then I really took a really long hiatus, really from both reading and writing, which is too bad. And I kind of got back into it, honestly, after watching Love, Simon in the theaters. And that was because, I just didn't realize how far queer fiction had progressed, until I literally had to see it in a movie theater. And I'm like, oh, there's a book about this. This is amazing. And so I read that. I loved it. And it kind of rekindled my passion for writing. One of the problems I always had with writing was, I always wanted to write about like queer characters and somebody like myself. And so the fact that there's like now this burgeoning industry of queer fiction really allowed me to, like I said, rekindle that passion and be able to write characters that I could connect to, which is, I think, one of the keys to good writing is when you feel a personal stake in the characters.
Yeah. So when you finally decided to start writing, how long does it take you to get that first book out? Or is the first book still sitting in a drawer somewhere and we're on the second and third books that actually came out into the public?
Yeah. I mean, the first book never quite got written completely. I was like, I really wanted to just write like total coming of age, gay, completely non-speculative. And it was actually really cathartic for me. Like I was like getting, all these, emotions out. But what I was writing was like a contemporary story set in modern day about this like terrible closeted kid. And, some people pointed out to me that this isn't really how a lot of queer, contemporary fiction is anymore. Because like,
interesting.
Yeah, it was interesting. It's not to say that it isn't. There's certainly, there's plenty of, fiction out that is sort of like closeted kids coming out and in kind of, trickier environments where it's not as accepting. But what I realized I had to do is start reading a lot of contemporary fiction, and I find out like so many of these stories are either queer normative or kids that are really have a really positive experience. Not to say we're not trying to like erase the struggles people have, but
Yeah.
keeping it positive and people that have and I decided that that was what I really actually wanted to write. Um, and so I kind of set that one aside, and I decided to try some other things.
Yeah. It's really interesting that you mentioned that, because it makes me think about when Love, Simon came out. And I remember getting very frustrated with the NPR Pop Culture Happy Hour review of that movie, because one of the things the hosts kind of dismissed was they're like, kids don't have this experience anymore. It's much easier to come out. And I was thinking, like, where do you live? Because
Yeah, right.
I live in the Midwest, and it's still very hard for kids to come out. And so there was this. It was the first time in my life I probably ever wanted to use the word coastal elites, because I was like, what do these
Yeah,
guys think the real world is? Like, I'm so happy for them and for their kids and where they live. Somebody coming out wouldn't be a big deal. But there are still so many places in our country and around the world where, like, coming out as a teenager in high school is still incredibly hard. It has to remain a secret until you get to college or escape your family unit in some way, shape, or form. So, yeah, it's interesting that was the response you got, is like, we're not really publishing those books anymore. And it's like,
yeah,
that's good. That's good. I would love for us to all live in that world. But the reality is we don't.
yeah. It's absolutely and it's interesting and I walk kind of a delicate line because I don't want to uh, give the impression that that's the world we live in. But I think you know humans tend to emulate art. And so some of the reasons why I decide to kind of focus on queer joy, I don't, like I said, I don't erase homophobia. I don't erase that they are gay, and that's like part of who they are. But I write this so that people can see what it can be like, right? Both for uh, queer kids who read my book, uh, queer adults who had traumatic, uh, coming outs or a tough time or just closeted and
Yeah.
getting to sort of live vicariously through people that have a better experience. And also hopefully straight people that look at this and say, oh, hey, maybe this is the world I want to live in. So what can I
Yeah.
do to make the world more like this? So
Yeah. It's interesting. It's almost like the books with queer joy are for the queer kids, and the books where the kids are still struggling are for the straight people. Like, please remember that this is still happening in the world. Don't get it twisted.
yeah, yeah,
That
yeah,
sort of thing. Like, yeah. So it is a tough line to walk, and I've had this conversation with a lot of different people, and depending on the day, I can fall on different sides of it. But it's
yeah,
interesting that, like, that was the response you got about writing a story where it was hard to be a gay kid, because it's still hard to be a gay kid in a lot of
yeah. No,
places. That's still
absolutely.
very much the reality.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting, and it may be that I decide to dust it off at some point, and go back to it. Even like my first book, Together in a Broken World, it was post-apocalyptic. You know, I could make it whatever I want. I can make
Yeah.
society whatever I want, and
Yeah. And I
it's
suppose they had a lot to deal with besides being gay.
yeah,
There was,
exactly. And it's largely a queer normative world. I think I probably only used the word gay like two or three times, and it's mostly just about an adventure and a love story where
Mhm.
the characters just happen to be gay. In my second book, it's I would say it's like half contemporary romance, half ghost story, and it's full on high school angst. Like kids with problems. The main kid has is a like body dysmorphia, and it just has a really, really bad self-image. But I went way heavier, kind of not heavier, but way more into like slightly non-accepting parents, which I think is very common. Parents that kind of like, oh, it's a phase, or we'll
Mhm.
tolerate it, um, and full-on bullying in high school. And so I did even kind of go against what previous advice I had was, and just make it a little bit more realistic, a little bit more, I think, what
Mm.
maybe some kids are dealing with these days.
Yeah. Well, and I would hope the reason is because it feels real to you, you know? So, yeah. We've talked a little bit about it, and maybe there's no more to say about it, but when it comes to writing queer characters, is there a particular reason that that's important to you, or why you're inspired to do that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I mentioned Love Simon is one of my influences. But the thing that really lit a fire on me was when I watched Heartstopper, the first time on the Netflix show.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and, that's kind of like queer joy at its almost purest. Certainly it deals with, homophobia and bullying. That happens, quite a bit. And, one of the characters is having like a bi awakening,
Mm-hmm.
as well. So, it's not like it's definitely dealing with stuff, but, um, you know, uh, after watching that, I'm like, oh, I want to be part of this kind of storytelling. I want to do whatever I can. Um, and, I've received some absolutely lovely, emails and or, social media DMs from people like from queer kids. One of which was emailed me and said, "This is a burner email because my parents are like super religious, and I just want to tell
Mm-hmm.
you that, this book meant so much to me. And I'm so excited, and it was really, really touching, and it was, very, um, a moment where I'm like, okay, I had a goal, and at some level I've accomplished it because I've touched
Yeah.
at least one person, so."
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you bring up Heartstopper, which is another one of those that's like, it is so uplifting and it
Yeah.
feels great, but it doesn't ignore all of those elements that we were just talking about.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
you
Yeah.
can do both. You can have
Yeah.
both.
Yeah, absolutely.
And again, that's not to say anything against the queer normative storylines that just don't want to deal with all of that stuff, because that's a breath of fresh air too for a lot of us. But it's a good example of like you can do both. So
Yeah. Yeah. No,
yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, just like in straight literature, like there's tons and tons and tons of stories where the fact that they're straight is just a
yeah,
given in the world,
yeah,
right? And so, I think there's plenty of space for those kinds of stories.
yeah.
So
That's a very good point. Very good
yeah.
point. Are there any other influences on you as a writer?
Of course, like I mentioned, Tolkien, and I read lots of fantasy as a child. I actually had a really interesting experience. I read a lot of Terry Brooks growing up, who wrote Sword of
Mm,
Shannara and a lot of,
hmm.
I think he's written like 50 fantasy books, and 40 of which are New York Times bestsellers, and maybe even more than that.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and so like, I haven't written full fantasy. I've been considering it. I think I like reading it better than writing it because
Hmm.
I'm a little bit of a literist.
It seems
Uh,
like a lot of work.
yeah. Well, I think if I wrote it, it'd be more character driven, than the massive, massive world building that some of these, giant
Yeah,
fantasy tomes are, because that's just more of my style. So,
yeah, for sure.
I love Stephen King. He's such a great storyteller in general. His writing style is amazing. His characters are incredible. Like, talk about a person that, writes genre fiction, but really writes character driven stories. His
Yeah.
stories are so much about the characters. But he likes to create these great characters you love and then destroy their lives. So that's always a little hard. I tend to not like to destroy my characters' lives as much as he does, but,
Yet you never know.
yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, we'll see. Sure. I'm early in my authoring journey.
Yeah,
So.
cut to 10 years from now and you're like, no, I just like to blow everything up.
Yeah, I know. I've seen quite a few author memes where they're like, like like their favorite thing is like the author's death sitting on a bench, and then all these characters moving along, and suddenly they're all dead, and they're like, ha
Mhm.
ha
Yeah,
ha.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
If somebody was coming to your work for the first time, where would you point them and what would you say is like your signature style that if they're interested in this, come read my book?
Yeah. I mean, so like I said, I'm a little bit early in my author journey. I only have two books. And they both have similar elements in that they're genre mixed with romance, and it's pretty even split.
Mm.
Really 50-50. And so I would point to either one depending on kind of what your interests are. The Together in a Broken World is more, it's post-apocalyptic, and it's like an adventure. It's quite fast-paced. It's like a road trip kind of story. And The Haunting Between Us, kind of like I mentioned, it's a little like Together in a Broken World. These are both YA. I would say Together in a Broken World is more like upper YA.
Mm-hmm.
The Haunting Between Us is squarely YA. 16-year-old kids in high school with, so if you like contemporary romance, and you don't mind a little bit spooky, it's not like
Mm-hmm.
super scary. It's more like goosebumps, spooky, or, there's
Yeah.
a few moments of chills, but it's mostly just atmospheric.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's kind of more your style, you can choose that. I would say either one of those, you know,
Great.
it just really
Yeah.
depends on the reader. So
I'm going to throw you a curveball here because I did not prep you for this question, but I'm thinking about it now that you're talking about young adult and new adult. Did you have to think about like how explicit the intimate relations, or if that would be on page at all? Just because like teenagers do more than I think we give them credit for, but how much do you want to put that in a book? Like, what was your thought process on how spicy to make it? I guess is the way to say
yeah,
it.
no, absolutely. I pushed the envelope a little bit. Everything's euphemistic. There's not like super explicit, body parts or anything like that.
Okay.
But I don't completely fade to black. And that was a bit of a, maybe a little controversial, but it's also a bit of um, a, a specific decision. So part of the reason why is like, being gay, part of it is the fact that you love, you want to have sex with men,
Yeah.
and to hide that feels shameful. So, and so I, to a certain extent, I didn't want to completely fade to black because I just wanted it to not feel like, oh, we won't go there. We're going to keep it, um, you know, safe for people. I wanted it because it is a beautiful thing. I had an interesting, I had one editor on my second book say, I think you need to make you need to fade, uh, in one paragraph of their feedback, they said, you really need to fade this to black. Why you can't handle this. And then in another paragraph, they're like, you need more violence and, gore. And I'm just like, what kind of world do we live in? Where, we are shameful about certain things, but we're like, oh, but we're fine with killing, right? And so, so it was kind of a calculated thing, and it is a delicate, uh, thing to walk because you obviously want to keep it, um, you know, still appropriate for audiences.
Right. Yeah. It's yeah, thank you for going down that road with me because it is interesting to me with as somebody who also loves YA and new adult work, and like I was not sexually active in high school because I was too afraid to be, but I know plenty of people were, which is weird
Yeah.
to think about now that I'm old enough to have a goddaughter who's driving, and I'm like,
No, I know.
huh, I'm like that's weird. How yeah, I guess she's like a little adult now.
Yeah, no, that it is definitely a strange thing. So it can be, it can be hard for parents, I think, to think about your kids as these little sexual beasts, which
Hmm.
they are,
Which is what they are. Exactly.
which is, it can be a tough thing.
Yeah, love that. All right. Well, Paul, I have also invited you here to play a game. Are you ready for that?
But yeah, let's do it.
All right, so the rules of our game are simple. I have a deck of cards, and on each card is a question. The questions aim to learn more about you personally, so some are biographical, some are hypothetical, some are just silly. But I will not be picking which questions you're going to answer. Fate is going to do that for us. So I am going to deal 3 cards every round,
Okay.
and you choose one. So whatever card you pick, you're agreeing to answer, with a couple of caveats. So if a question comes along that you don't want to answer, you have 2 opportunities to switch things up. You can turn the tables on me one time, forcing me to answer the question, or you can also discard a personal question in favor of answering a more bookish question from the white deck. But then you're only dealt 1 card and you have to answer it. So are you ready to play?
Yeah.
Here we go. Card 1, card 2, or card 3?
So, okay, I just have to randomly pick one. All right, card 1, I guess.
I was like, yeah, you don't get to know what the questions are.
Well, I thought I was going to get to know them. Okay, well, that's fine.
Nope, it's all blind. It's fate.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, here we go. Is cereal soup? Why or why not?
I would say it's not, but
Okay.
this is like one of those questions about whether is a taco a hot dog and are they sandwiches, right? Like, I would say no, and I think it's because, you're mixing 2 different ingredients together. So,
so that.
Yeah, that's my answer.
All right, card 1, card 2, or card 3?
Let's do 2.
All right. What technology do you wish existed?
Which technology? I mean, how about a technology that medical technology that made you not age anymore?
How long would you want that to last?
Oh yeah,
is there a point at which you'd want to turn it off? Because it sounds great, and like I wouldn't mind an extra, who knows how many years, maybe 100, maybe a couple hundred. But I have to imagine I would get bored. And also, if the apocalypse happens and then we're all just like existing in a wasteland because we can't die.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, this is one of those wishes which is fraught with all kinds of ethical concerns. Like, are people required to stop having kids now? Like, and then how do we all? Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I don't have any idea.
Have you read Neil Shusterman's Scythe series, Arc of the Scythe series?
No. I'm sure this has been well thought out in lots of sci-fi.
I would say that is probably the best take on this sort of thing that I've read, and highly recommend it. I really enjoyed the books, really enjoyed the audiobooks. So highly recommend.
There was a Doctor Who episode, that obviously deals with long life and stuff, but this one particular character, Doctor Who gave forever immortality and kept then visiting them. It was the little girl from Game of Thrones. She was on that episode. She was the one who played that character. After he, visited her like eons later, she just didn't even have enough memory capacity to have remembered that he had done that to begin with. And so she would like have tomes and tomes of things she wrote down for her memory. So like, that's kind of an interesting take on that you existed so long that you don't even know why you were the way you were or what happened or.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I suppose we have a capacity. Our brains are little computers too. So, all right. Interesting. Okay. Card 1, card 2, or card 3?
Let's go back to 1.
Okay. If you had to delete all but 3 apps from your smartphone, which 3 would you keep?
Well, I probably keep, I'm using Signal now to do all my texting. So I probably need to still communicate with that. And that's probably one of my primary ones. Yeah. That's a tricky question. I hate social media. I don't really want to go there, but I would have to probably keep one of my social media, apps. I can't decide which. TikTok, like you've mentioned, you've seen me a lot on that. So it's been doing well for me. So. But I don't like TikTok. But, I don't know. One of the social media apps, and I don't know, probably a game that I really like. Maybe let's just round it out with that. So,
love it. All right, card 1, card 2, or card 3?
Let's do 3.
All right. Has anyone ever started a rumor about you? And if so, what was it about?
I don't know. I was like kind of a bit of a loner in high school. I had a group of like 4 friends, and that seems like the time when you'd be most ripe to have rumors.
Right.
And we were pretty insular, so it wasn't like a lot went on. I don't know. I mean, I don't, there might have been, I guess there was like when I was closeted younger, I think there might have been one time where some people suspected I was gay and like maybe started that rumor.
Right.
Which, it's a true rumor, but it was not,
It's
at
still
the
a
time
rumor if it's not confirmed. Yeah.
yeah, right. So, yeah, maybe that one, which, that's obviously some painful memories I have from my childhood for that.
Can relate.
Yeah.
Had some nasty things scrawled on my locker when I was in high school. So,
yeah.
Card 1, card 2, or card 3?
Go back to 2.
Okay. If you could have anything named after you, what would you want it to be?
How about a star?
Yeah, that's good. I like that. Card 1, card 2, or card 3?
1.
If you could be guaranteed one thing in life besides money, what would you want?
I mean, like, first thing that springs to mind is happiness, but that's obviously pretty nebulous. But I'll just go with it. Happiness.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to see how the universe,
miserable. Yeah.
Right, how the universe delivers on that. Like, what would that be? What does that actually look like? It'd be interesting to have somebody do that just to be able to see what that actually looks like.
Right. And of course, because we think about like movies like The Twilight Zone or Black Mirror, where like, careful what you ask for, right? Like, I'm sure they could figure out some way to twist that. Fates could figure out some way to twist that to be a bad thing, Like maybe I'm constantly have a smile on my face and I can't ever get rid of it.
Yeah. Okay. Card 1, card 2, or card 3?
2.
All right. How many chickens would it take to kill an elephant? I told you some of these were silly.
I don't know. Maybe like 200.
They'd have a good shot.
A lot.
You
need a lot. Because elephants are tough mothers.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Card 1, card 2, or card 3?
What have we chosen that recently? I guess we'll be back to 3.
Okay. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if anyone has specifically given me this piece of advice, but it's turned into a mantra of mine, which is, and it goes back to being happy.
Yeah.
Don't stick around in a situation, be it a job or a relationship or, anything like that. If you're not happy, there are, very few people, will stay in a bad relationship or at a bad job for a really long time and think, if only I'd stayed longer.
Yeah.
So make sure you're happy. And don't be afraid to, make big changes to make sure you stay happy.
Yeah. Yeah. Good advice. All right. I think we have time for one more round here. So card 1, card 2, or card 3?
All right. We'll finish up with 1.
All right. Have you ever been arrested? And if so, what for?
No, I've never been arrested.
Good. Well. I'm glad. Were you ever afraid you were about to be arrested?
I was pretty stupid in college. I had more than one drunk encounter with a police officer.
You know what? That's when you're supposed to do that. So good for you.
Yeah.
Good job.
I know, but yeah, that's as close as it ever got.
Well, that's good. I like that. Thank you, Paul, so much for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. It's been great. I enjoyed it.
Good. And thank you, listeners, for joining us for Queers and Quills, the official podcast. If you're already signed up to attend Queers and Quills, make sure to say hello to me and to Paul at the Oregon Convention Center in May. And if you're not, follow Queers and Quills on Instagram to follow along with all the fun this year and get updates about ticket availability in the future. Until next time, I'm Kirt Graves, and I hope you're having a very gay day. Queers and Quills, the official podcast, is produced and hosted by Kirt Graves, in coordination with Mahogany Mail and Marley Valentine. All copyrighted material is shared with permission. Music and sound effects are licensed through Storyblocks Audio. All opinions shared are those of the individuals and do not reflect the positions or policies of any company or organization with which they happen to be associated.